People like the idea, first of all, of their investment being tied to an asset. These days, it's critical, I believe. Now, I'm not talking about freshwater provision. I believe that should remain a governmental thing. Every attempt to privatize freshwater has been a disaster. But treating dirty water, which is a much harder job, needs to be in the hands of the people who make it dirty. And since industry and agriculture is 90% of all freshwater demand, it solves a lot of problems. And so we became very, very excited about decentralized water. I started building companies that could do that. Let's see how the sequence went was I bought a company that did these huge custom installations for like power plants and stuff. Then we created out of whole cloth one of these modular containerized water system, these pods that you could drop into a brewery and plug it in and you're up and running. And that is done very well, modular water. And then finally, during COVID, we came up with the idea of capital-free water treatment. You're a business, you want to start treating your own water, well, just switch meters. You don't have to worry about, coming up with $1 million. Just switch meters from the city to the company Water on Demand. Companies love it, but investors love it because obviously we couldn't fund it for a long time with our own money. We had to create a vehicle. We created something like the oil and gas master limited partnerships that are out there, where how investors, any investor can do it. It's slightly complicated, but you can do it. You can invest in a basket of energy properties that returns royalty and has all kinds of benefits. And we copied that for water. And people like the idea, first of all, of their investment being tied to an asset. These days, it's critical, I believe. Secondly, it's got a profit share return. And thirdly, it's water. It's not oil. And people like that. And, the big problem, Mark, that I run into as an everyday investor is, where do I put my money?
Right.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I know I should have put it all in Bitcoin back in 2010, but I didn't. So where do like Ashton Kutcher put his money into, for example, he was part of the Sequoia thing. So he got into Airbnb early. He made 157,000% on his money. You and I don't have that kind of access. But we do have that kind of access. And I'm opening with a view of what's in front of my place. I'll go back to the regular logo, but I thought, we'd have some swaying palm trees for a change. Why not? Anyway, so I'm very excited to have you here. And yes, Paul Fetcher says, so glad to see the on-time start. Well, we eventually get good. What can I say? But, the style here is, as you know, we start with the three crazy guys right from the beginning. So Ken and AJ, jump on board, please. It kind of looks like you have some kind of salt shaker there. Your microphone, it's got this little round.
Yeah, it's a pop filter. It's a metal
pepper
pop
grinder.
Filter. It's a metal pop filter. It works better than the fabric ones. Thank you.
You mean one of these?
Yes, the good old windsock. It's a good thing.
Well, all right. So let's get it on. Water on the Rocks, Thursday, May 16, 2024, briefing number 262, Save the Planet, Recycle Water. Okay, so, and I'm just going to do a minor adjustment here because it turns out that I have a green screen and I will look better in non-virtual mode. All right.
That opened up so many potential jokes. I'm going to just...
You're just going to let them hang out there? Just going to let them sit?
Going to left them unsaid. I'll let the audience chime in.
There you go.
Thank you. Thank you.
Night at the Improv.
All right, so let's jump right into the X. We're going to make it relatively short because we are. So let me just...
There's a lot of ground to cover on Twitter. Let's put it that way.
There's a lot of ground to cover on Twitter. Well, let's see what this was. This was kind of cool. generally there is too much water in some places, not enough in others. And the big problem is that the government infrastructure is completely underwater. The unmet demand is approaching $100 billion a year for infrastructure. It's not being met. Why? Because there's not a lot of awareness. People think everything's fine. Politicians, of course, they deal with issues that voters care about. So if the voters aren't like too excited about water, not much is going to be done. For example, last week, the Biden administration traveled to Pittsburgh to inaugurate a huge clean water initiative, $6 billion. Woohoo! Drop in the bucket. But the problem really is this. The original paradigm of central water treatment is a very poor one. We have the centralization where just everything gets sent to the central place, and as a result, no one gets good service. In fact, it's worse than this $100 billion number. Now, we've been told that by 2029, the unmet annual deficit will be $435 billion. Why? Because we have the climate change issue. We may disagree on ways to handle climate change, but there's no question that there's change occurring and is affecting the water industry. So with that, we're just going to have to do the right thing. And well, we're not going to be getting $500 billion a year anytime soon for central systems. So what are you
talking about? That just print it. It's easy. You just
there's the thing. So this story is actually really fun because Ken and I both are Pittsburghers, and not natively, but we live here. And anyone that's seen Pittsburgh, knows of Pittsburgh, understands that you're talking about a mountainous terrain. So when you're saying, okay, we're going to give $6 billion for water treatment, what does that mean? How are you going to do that? The city of Pittsburgh is in one area. And then just like in Los Angeles, how LA County goes on for forever, right? Allegheny County, which is the city where the city of Pittsburgh resides, goes on forever too, and over mountains, and there's tunnels and all kinds of stuff. The topography, and this is what people don't understand, the topography of so many locations around the U.S. and around the world is not conducive to a centralized system.
No, you're not digging a giant tunnel through the mountain.
No. You're not.
You're not.
It's just not going to happen. So the fact that we need on-site treatment and the fact that we're presenting this solution and that it makes so much freaking sense, especially in the context of all of the geography around these major areas. I mean, I'm even thinking of areas like major metropolitan areas around here, like Boston, right? Or New York. These are areas that it's not easy to just dedicate an entire huge chunk of land, although I know New York is doing it in some respect, but it's not easy to designate a massive chunk of land to just make the centralized system and then tie everything into it. And it's really putting, a square peg in a round hole. And so it kind of is almost like you say, it's a drop in the bucket. It's more, it's even less than that though, is what I guess I'm trying to say, because there's no ultimate plan on how they're going to make this better. They just think that they can augment the existing systems and make it go away. And meanwhile, we're the boiling, the frog in the boiling pot.
Think of the almost incalculable damage to the debasement of our currency if they choose to simply just print the money.
But here's the thing. They're not going to do it because, as I mentioned in this video, there's complacency about water. So now people are starting to freak out. Ken was in a webinar where people were freaking out, but they didn't have answers. We do. Let's keep on trucking here. And I'm not going to play all of these. You're supposed to be on RigZec and getting all that stuff. Let's take a look. Well, let's take a look at what Grant Cardone had to say. It's always fun and different. Prediction, Fed will abruptly abandon no more rate cuts. Inflation is still a risk. Yes, it's very likely that the Fed will drop rates for the election. And oh my gosh. Because right now, credit card consumers the credit card situation is very bad. A lot of delinquencies. The mortgage applications have crashed. Housing's installed. The only reason housing is still going, in my opinion, is that people are making safe harbor investments against the dollar, because at least real estate, some kind of tangible value.
What did I tell you, Riggs? Buy condos in Florida on golf courses. Even I can't lose money in that, right? I mean, that was literally, and that was just freeze drying my money against inflation.
By the way, going back to Paul Fetcher helped us out here, because apparently Allegheny County, Pittsburgh, has 1,200 bridges, more than even Madison County. Well said, Paul.
Yeah,
the bridges of Madison County.
And Paul, the other dirty little question is, how much money do you think Pittsburgh wants to help fix their bridges that they keep saying they're going to fix and then don't get fixed in a timely fashion? A lot. So I have about as much confidence that they can fix the water issues in Pittsburgh as I do they can fix the bridges. So that's not saying very much.
Yes. And while I'm at it, Francisco Velasco and Mucho Gusto says, hi, I've been following OriginClear initiative and model for a while. I think it is great. Are you considering exporting the model to Europe? How we're going to be doing this is once we have it really set, properly done in the US, then we want to clone it to other, basically get financial partners in places like, London, Singapore, Bahrain, et cetera. And they will in turn run a water-on-demand fintech for their region. Remember, water-on-demand in its purest evolution is a straight fintech. It does not require a water company. It can give contracts to water companies. And so that's how we export it. And
A pure play.
Stephen Davis says, right now, real estate is cash deals and new construction with builders subsidized mortgage rates. I do agree with that. What I was saying was the people who have the cash are putting it in real estate because the cash is going down the tubes. That's basically what I was saying. I agree that mortgages
We
are
were kind of saying the same thing, right? Yeah.
mortgages are not happening. Anyway, let's continue right here because we got so much to cover in this show. GameStop. People are already losing money on this damn thing. Whatever. Anyway.
Well, you know what happens. You know what's happening with that, right?
Well, now it's an SEC investigation.
Well, yeah, but they have done this thing where every once in a while it's kind of similar. It's similar to what Elon did with Dogecoin, right? Like Dogecoin to the moon.
Yeah.
They did the same thing with GameStop, where there's a couple guys that were just like, you know what, GameStop's going down the tubes. Screw it, I'm just going to pump it. And so they started pumping GameStop, and the SEC basically halted trading on GameStop because they're like, hey, we know GameStop's not worth this. You can't trade like this. And they're basically obstructing the free market plays that these people are making under GameStop. And it's just a very interesting use case to see how they're getting in and intervening in this case, because people are making money, but they know it's all, ether, because GameStop's in terrible shape right now.
Well, what GameStop did is it went ahead and they're funding a whole bunch of debt retirement, the same way AMC is with these meme stocks. So they're laughing. They're laughing. Yeah. Let me just take a look at GME right now, this second. It's now back to 27.67. So it's, let's see, 5 days. Oh yeah. Good old mountain graph. So it's on its way back down. It's below 30 again, because it got as high as 58. Yeah.
And the guys that were buying it at 58 and 60 and 73 were the Robin Hood kids.
Yeah. With
like the last money they had in the world. And it just goes down to that beating up on the little guy thing, which is just infuriating.
64.83 was the high.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting you mentioned that, Ken, because sometimes a lot of these things are starting in more of like a grassroots Reddit, Discord kind of underworld that just goes, we're gonna run up GameStop. And a lot of the guys that are these little guys that are throwing in a couple really early end up banking out pretty big, which they did a lot in some of those random crypto pump and dumps. So, but
other than the securities fraud, it's fine. I mean, yeah.
Whatever. Anyway, what I'm trying to say here is throwing money at these stupid meme events, whatever, it's just desperation. It does not work.
It is.
All right.
Absolutely.
Well, it might be good entertainment.
But when you have credit cards at 30%, people get desperate.
You want to find early stage assets that are not being meddled with.
Yep.
All right. Oh, now guess what? Producer inflation comes in at a scorching 6.2% producer inflation.
Producer price index?
Yeah, PPI.
Yeah.
Terrible. Because, it gets worse when it's passed on to the consumer, right?
Well, it's fantastic to go to the grocery store. I went with my wife last night. We just picked up a few things for dinner for tonight, and we walked out with 2 bags for $50, and she's just like, "What?" Because she normally does a lot of our grocery shopping online, and so she just sees the total bill for everything we buy, and it's like, okay, I guess it's more than what we think. But you go in, you get a couple bags worth of stuff, and you're out for $55. She's like, "What the hell?" I'm like, "Well."
What really kills me is when my wife goes, because there's a in the Giant Eagle, there's a Starbucks. So whatever it was, you can add like $80 to it. So,
well, I mean, so again, I've been on this, I've been on a health kick lately, not for just a kick, but for a full life change. And one of the things I'm eating a lot more of is like raw nuts. And so I go to the Giant Eagles, our local chain, and you can go and get just macadamia nuts, $10 for a
Yep.
tub of
Right.
macadamia nuts.
For like a what? A quarter, half pound, right? Half pound?
Yeah, it's like it's
$20 a pound.
ridiculous. But I mean, like it's one of the few things I can snack on that doesn't spike your glucose, right? So it's like, well,
It's
$10
so
for
funny.
macadamia nuts.
Riggs,
Right.
I was looking at that image you just said. I was looking at it this morning going, oh my God, this is true.
It is so true. It is so true. The 60s all the way. And just the last word on grocery shopping. These days, we go to Costco as our local supermarket.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't go to the Whole Foods near you?
Oh God, please. Anyway, so this is, well, it's self-explanatory, but it's a heck of a meme.
It's a great
so
meme.
True. Yeah. All right. Well, ESG ratings. Let's talk about it. Our pods, because they create opportunities for reuse, that is a source of ESG ratings for that user because water reuse is on the ESG rating index. So the benefits are there if they want it. But right now, it's, this is very early days. The stuff that's being adopted is really being adopted by the people who have to do it. They got no choice. They got to do it. But that's big. Modular Water, our pod company, it grew 7 times from 2019 to 2023. So just taking off like crazy, just working with the people who have to have it. What we believe is that once we fully implement water on demand, which is the water as a service, that will broaden the market tremendously because all of a sudden there's no more financial issue. There's no more capital issue, right? You don't have to get an SBA loan or whatever. They just sign on a dotted line and it just becomes another monthly bill. And that, I believe, is going to turn it into a real tornado of adoption. From my lips. All right, let's continue here. So this is what's going on is stagflation. We know it's stagflation. I'm not going to get into it. It's imagine a recession, but the cost of everything goes up. So the recession is happening and you have inflation at the same time. Stagflation is not a pretty sight. Unfortunately, it's what's going on. And then I retweeted something from Ken, stock market worse than Vegas. Oh, yeah. Nancy Pelosi is doing great. And this is the problem with Wall Street is insider trading is ridiculous, just ridiculous. And coming right up to the end here, we've already covered this thing about the huge boom north of Dallas, so I'm not going to get into it. So with that, I am going to jump out of X and we're going to get on with the rest of the show.
There's a guy who fashions himself as a guru. He just publishes whatever Nancy Pelosi buys because she has to disclose it and he buys it. Do you know that he's up like 800% this year?
Hey, well, why aren't we doing that, right? Because you know what?
Because we don't like jail.
No, it's publicly traded. No,
You're right.
You can follow Nancy. It's actually
you're right. You can do it after the fact. You're right. You're correct.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember. I have a day job. And it keeps me nose down, tail up.
No, you
Believe
can't
me, if I had time to trade, I'd actually make money.
Yeah. All right. So let me see. I got a couple interviews here. This is kind of interesting. This is an Origins interview. So let's see what this guy's got to say. You've got to deal with the problem in front of you in a way that saves your bacon. You've got to do that.
Joining me today is Riggs Eckelberry, and we are going to be talking about if water is the new gold. He's joining us from Clearwater, Florida today, and the interesting fact that I got to dig up on him is that he actually has a master's of commercial ongoing vessels, which I don't even really know what that means. I'm guessing it involves boats. And essentially, this is where he got his first experience and really his education when it came to institutional PR, organizational management, and it actually started off in the nonprofit sector. So, Riggs, welcome to the show. And what is that about?
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me on. And yes, early on, I had the privilege of working with one of the 20th century's most known philosophers, L. Ron Hubbard. And I worked directly with him to help him with, we were on a ship, the ship that he was based upon. Mobility was important because he was getting a lot of PR attacks and really we had to figure out how to make strong enough friends ashore that we wouldn't be affected by the wider propaganda, whatever was going on. And so that was really the training that I had, which was how do you treat a topic with complete truth? He insisted on, this is one of the most important things about PR he insisted upon, which is always operate with the truth, never operate with lies. That was number one. Another one he said is never create a PR problem where there is none. So you could easily create one, and you got to watch out for that. But operate with the truth, but also operate within the acceptance level of people ashore who they primarily just want to, sell you some produce or whatever it is. And so how do you relate to people in a way that is real to them? And so I learned so much about PR from him. And as part of that, because we were on a ship, I became a master of ocean-going vessels, as you said, and spent time not working with him, but, in the South Pacific, on general cargo steamers, otherwise known as tramp steamers, and sailing around the South Pacific and having crazy adventures. And from that, I learned really, you have got to deal with the problem in front of you in a way that essentially saves your bacon. You've got to do that. No matter what, you've got to do that. Yeah. So being a master mariner was very interesting because there's no calamity that could occur on land that quite relates to potentially hitting the rocks, and dying and so forth. Paul says shipping is an emergency. Let's go 6 nautical miles per hour. Literally, this is where I said, what am I doing on this darn ship? We were doing 8 knots, which in land miles is about 10 miles per hour, all the time, day and night. I'd go off watch. I had the 4 a.m. to the 8 a.m. morning and evening. I was on that particular ship. I was the first mate. And then I'd go to sleep, wake up again, and the same darn island was right there. I'm like,
hey, you moved to the other side of the island. You're like, we could walk faster.
Oh, and so
jogging, in fairness, it would be jogging.
It would be jogging. But I remember I was going by this coast at this awful crawling rate, and I looked at the chart, and I put my finger on the chart. It was the northern coast of Papua New Guinea, saying, remember, you hated this. This was so boring, because after the fact, it goes, oh, it was so wonderful with all the, Conradian, adventures and so
exotic
forth.
Locations.
But right, it was slow. Oh, my Lord. So I finally just, came back to the U.S. And that's when I, of course, eventually got into computers, got to know Paul Fetcher, and to his detriment. And here we are.
So you need a button on the boat for ludicrous speed. That's what you need.
Yeah, if I'd had the $19 billion in subsidies that Tesla received, I might be all right.
There you go.
Or if you had Mel Brooks write the script, you'd have ludicrous speed.
That would have ludicrous speed, and I would oversell and I'd be in trouble. Let's continue here.
Well, I caught the reference, AJ.
Thank you.
Spaceball.
It was a good, it was Spaceball. It was a really good, it's an interesting clip. I don't want to let that clip just sit with the ship story. The point you make about the honesty in PR, right, and telling things that tell the truth, that's one of the things that's so powerful about the messaging. I feel like every week we have new truth to tell based on all the developments that are happening internally. Right, of which I'm not going to get into details right now, call Ken. But we've got new stuff happening all the time that makes, I don't want to say it makes the dream, but it makes all of the efforts of the past number of years come together in such a wonderfully amazing way to be able to say, okay, look, the things that we said that we wanted to do, we're doing. The things that we hoped that we could do, we're doing, right? All of that stuff is moving along in such a marched fashion at this point that there's almost an endless pool of stuff for us to tell you guys about in its right time. And so it's a super exciting time to be a marketing guy, because I have a ton of truth to tell you. It's like, what is the thing that's most important to tell you at any given moment is the challenge. So it was just a good clip that kind of spoke to that moment. It's like we're living in such an exciting time that there's so much stuff to tell about all the things that we're doing.
Marketing and international shipping have one thing in common. The one thing you don't want to be doing is a whole lot of stuff that you don't want to be doing. Right. And what I mean is like, well, it gets you killed on a ship. But in marketing, you find out you're 90 days in, you go, we spent what?
I know.
Right? So
True.
thankfully we're not. And I was, yeah, I gloated a little today. So we're not doing a whole lot of stuff we're not supposed to be doing right now. So that felt good too. It's look, it's not just what you're doing right, it's what you're not doing wrong.
Right.
And they are different.
They're very different.
Right? You can do a lot of stuff right and still do the right things wrong. You're going nowhere. So
Do that. Well, let's play the 16-year overnight success clip. I've really devoted my life in the 16-year overnight success that we've had to transforming the water industry. In New York City, I started a company that was putting the first businesses onto mini computers from these, bear down hard safeguard ledger, like got to push hard to get through the copies kind of thing. And that was my business and also a major learning experience. Fast forward to the 90s, so this is the 80s in New York. 90s was the .com, which I fell in love with, had a wonderful time. And it culminated, as you said, with a role as the number 2 at Cyber Defender, taking it onto the NASDAQ. Between 1995 and 2005, I basically I did the corporate ladder, because up till then I'd been, nonprofit, ships, working in film, various things, but had never been corporate. And first of all, I'd rather be an entrepreneur, but if you want real capital, you've got to go corporate. And so I had to bite the bullet and do it, because you cannot survive in the corporate world without having spent serious time in it, as you know.
Yeah.
So in 1995, I started, and then by 2005, I was a number 2 in a company going to the NASDAQ. And at that point, I did the foolish thing of asking a fund if they needed a CEO. Big mistake. Ask you want to watch out what you wish for, because they said yes. And all of a sudden, I was a CEO of a company that was in this crazy space called algae for biofuels, which is one of those kind of spaces. But at the time, with the crude oil in 2007 at $120 a barrel, it worked. That would be today like 160. It was ridiculously high. It was being kept high by design to encourage renewables. But along came fracking and goodbye high price. And at that point, we realized that we were not going to do algae anytime soon. I still think it's a wonderful thing, but what we did is we reinvented the business into a space that really, really needed our help, which is the water treatment, wastewater treatment, which is in deep trouble and is very neglected, and also is very hard to change. A lot of complacency, a lot of like, we are the big water people and we don't change a lot kind of thing. And so I've really devoted my life in the 16-year overnight success that we've had to transforming the water industry. And we believe we finally found the point, the fulcrum, where we can move the needle and make change happen. Wow. I think I mixed my metaphors. The fulcrum, where we can move the needle. That was a mixed metaphor if I ever used one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually continue here, because we have something very exciting that we're going to bring to everyone. We're going to review the term sheet of the Water on Demand Showcase. So we're going to Yes, indeed. This is going to be a lot of fun.
This is going to be neat.
And by the way, I do have my water on the rocks, lead crystal highball glass with fine reverse osmosis water. All right, here we go. Let's take a look at this. All right, so this is what we came up with. This is an actual term sheet that was reviewed by the client, by Dan Early, the head of Modular Water, our intermediate, our partner that we're working with in Central West Texas, or West Central Texas, and the end user, the client, who has 6 mobile home parks. Now, the other 5 actually are connected to the sewage system. This is the one that's not. And now the state of Texas is demanding that they fix it. This is the classic situation. All right, let's quickly go through the terms, and then I want to show you the numbers. All right, so we're making it very clear. We're not financing. It remains our property. The assets remain the property of Water on Demand. Is a pure service contract. And so it just goes on forever, and we just take care of business. Includes all things you see here, systems, maintenance, repairs, et cetera. All we want is somebody at the facility to respond, like if we want them to turn a valve or something like that. Of course, we have to make sure they decently credit qualified. We have to secure the assets because, as Ken has been telling our investors, when you invest in water on demand, you yourself get the ability to put a lien on the assets yourself to enforce the royalty payment. So in turn, we have to file a lien as well. Now, the important thing is not to do what's called a UCC1, which encumbers the entire enterprise. UCC1s are used by lenders to secure what they're lending against. For example, a photocopy machine or whatever. In fact, I remember at one time, computers were so expensive in the 80s that I literally signed a UCC1 to lease a computer. It was like $15,000 PC. Ridiculous. Anyway, of course, anytime they don't make payments, we give them 90 days, we deactivate the control system, and now they're in deep trouble because there's no sewage treatment. They are the permit holder. Again, that's very important. Now, how can they buy it out? Well, they buy out by simply paying the original package price, $382,000, adjusted for whatever for inflation, which I'll show you in a minute. So they have to pay for the entire thing. Now, I'm not going to get into this too much, but basically, it's everything up to 5,000 gallons per day in this particular case, and if it goes over, then there's a surcharge. Inflation is based on the trailing 2 years of the urban CPI. And of course, new owner, we get to approve and they take over the rights and obligations. Okay, so let's take a look here what this thing looks like. So basically we give them 5 options. The first option is the best one from a cash flow point of view because the client is coming up with a down payment and is not putting the construction on a service contract. It's kind of stupid to take the digging of the ground and the building of the irrigation field and all that, and because there's no maintenance involved, there's no service, so it's why I put it on a service contract. So, but they do have the opportunity to do it. Option B is no down payment, still excluding the construction. C is flipped it around. Actually, that's a mistake there. It should be 10% down payment with construction included. And then this one here is the one with 0% down, construction included, which is the most, in Ken's terms, moochy in terms of what they pay. But actually, option E gives them a shorter term contract, only 10 years, but they end up paying more. If you look at the bottom, you see the average payments range from $88.92 all the way up to $10,000, depending on the option. So, and the annual increases, this is, the power of compound interest. That is the inflation. Currently 5.44%. Some people are telling me it's going to go over, I'm going to go lower. If we go over 5K, says Timothy, and what do they pay? What do we pay per gallon after the 5,000? Very good point. Let me see. Yeah, we didn't state it here. Discharges in excess of rated capacity for 90 days or longer shall be grounds for default, requiring additional charges. Essentially, it's tiers above. So it is essentially what this is, even though it looks like a fixed fee deal, it's actually a pay per gallon because it's a pay per gallon with a minimum, meaning you're going to pay a minimum of,
it's 5,000, right? You're paying 5,000 a day minimum, and then anything above, you have like an overage charge. Like cell phones do that with texting. You have a texting plan. You have 10 gigs, and if you go over, you start paying big money.
Exactly. So that's what it looks like. Now, I made some notes here, some issues that we're still grappling with. Now, they have about 50 homes there, and actually, in the state of Texas, the average home consumption is 246 gallons per day. So if you do the math, you're going to have a 10,000 gallon per day site system. Now, the problem is that 5,000 gallons per day is the sweet spot for permitting in Texas right now. So right now we're evaluating, is it better to do two 5,000s or one 10,000? So that's going back and forth. Now, also the client wanted to be in the ground, and Ken says, well, why not just offer him above ground? And we're looking at that as well. It may be less aesthetic, but if we can save him money, then I personally think they look great. And, we can put graffiti, we can paint them, we can put whatever we want.
Actually, in one of the videos, Dan, and we have to show that, Dan did a presentation at with Qua, and they showed these decorative veneers that go on outside of them, and there's like this, like the lathing or the slats you get with the ivy on it. I mean, you would not know that this was a water processing building
Sure.
to look at it. It was very aesthetically pleasing. It looked like a picket fence.
So that maybe work out better. Finally, the client brought up, say, hey, by the way, what about if in 10 or 20 years, because Austin's growing, this is near Austin, actually it's closer to San Antonio, but the point is these cities grow and eventually sewage catches up. And so there'll have to be an abandonment fee. And that means literally we come over and we dig the unit out of the ground, which is why it's better to have it on a pad, and we take it away. So they will have to pay for that because we're going to take the unit back. Now, here's what's cool. We refurbish that unit, we put it somewhere else. We're not selling it. We don't care if it looks old, as long as it works, to standard. So these are basically evergreen units. So that is what is going on there. Now, it's going very well. Paul Fetcher says UCC1 secures non-real property. You're absolutely right. And that was making the example of the computer. But more to the point, here's a big reason why this customer wanted this particular solution. He's got a securitized lender for his mobile home park. He can't add more. No. Well, he'd have to get approval from the lender, and the lender won't do it. So he is stuck with the service contract. This is where so many operators. There's some people like in real estate who pay cash. Fine, pay cash. Some people are able to finance. Go ahead, finance, or do your own lease. But so many are encumbered with SBA loans or securitized financing or whatever, and they're securitized is the wrong term. He said securitized it's secured financing. Securitized is a totally different term that we learned in 2008, didn't we? When it all blew up.
MERS.
Yeah. MERS. Yeah, the virus.
MRSA. Yeah, not MRSA. Not to be confused with MRSA, but a similar outcome.
Exactly.
Right.
So anyway, this is live. It's happening. They're going back and forth, et cetera. And what I'm doing now is I'm starting to light up, because let's say these guys take forever, which they can. I'm now lighting it up with some other people. Literally, I was at an event last Friday night, sitting next to a guy, and it turns out that he's big in trailer parks. I didn't even know it. And through our web designer, AJ, I found out that this guy is, who I'm not going to mention for his privacy, but he's big in trailer parks. Like literally, he's a buddy that I was sitting next to, and I was yucking it up at the event. I had no idea. So we use our networks, and we're going to get more of these. What we want to do is get one good showcase. I don't want to do 12, because you make 12 mistakes. No, you want to make one set of mistakes. All right. So that's that. Now, cool things going on here. Dan commented that he was introduced to a local engineering company that is big in decentralized work, just like we are. And for the last 10 years has been looking for something like modular water. And he currently uses concrete, which we know is expensive and it degrades. And so, boom, this guy, this is happening. I get these notes from Dan several times a week. He's constantly making these connections. So he's starting to really get into a great networking situation. All right. Guess what? We're going to go monthly. We have decided that these weekly events are wonderful, but they are so often that we have a hard time promoting them. What we have in mind here is to make this Water on the Rocks a monthly event, and we really, set it up properly with somebody like Kevin Harrington, and we do a big deal and get a lot of people. Also, I'm not sure that 8 p.m. Eastern is the right time of day for East Coast, and that we think, I've been consulting with the PR people and so forth, and we think this is going to be better. Now, you're not going to be stuck with us every week, but I think we'll be able to get a better show, number one. It'll be also, we'll have a chance
It'll be denser, right? There'll be a lot more dense.
Well, for one thing, I'm not going to go through the darn X. You guys are going to have to subscribe or follow RigsEck yourself.
Yeah, who's going to have time for that? Right.
Well, right, exactly. So we're going to actually, trim away a lot of the a lot of the
You can follow Riggs when he trolls me on X and when I troll him back.
exactly.
It's kind of fun.
Well, this Elon keeps trolling me, and I'm like, stop, dude. I mean, come on.
I know.
He gets on my nerves. He's like,
I just talked to him the other day about that, and I said, you got to let him up for air, man.
so true. How does he find the time? Jesus. Anyway, now Timothy's got, and thank you, Paul. 8 p.m. Eastern is ideal. Ray LeBon says monthly, yes. Eliminate the filler on the front end. Focus on the quality content, yes. And Keith Rutten agrees also. Now, so I guess 8 p.m. is still good. Fine. Because it's a good time. Like it's still 5 p.m. Pacific, so it's after work for people. Timothy wants to know what chemicals clean the water. How does water arrive? Clean drinking and bathing. Thanks. Okay. Well, it's very simple. The water still comes from the city. We do not try to privatize the fresh water. Not our job. Because the city does a fine job with it. Let them do it. And a water pipe is nothing. A water pipe, you can connect to fresh water or build a well and you're set. It's really the wastewater that's the problem. And so, 1 second here, I just scrolled away. Now, what chemicals clean the water? Well, there's a couple different ways we have it. There's membrane bioreactors, which is basically like a big stomach with bacteria in it. And then that combined with filters, either ultrafiltration or reverse osmosis. And then also we have integrated film, which is the version that we're showing here at, I should watch out for undefined terms because I
believe it was in there. I believe the acronym was in there, right?
Correct. So it's integrated fixed film activated sludge. As I described a few briefings ago, basically the bacteria IFAS involves adding an attached growth media, i.e. film, to an activated sludge tank to facilitate biomass growth. Essentially, the bacteria grows on the film. Essentially, the media can be fixed or free floating. Anyway, so
not that different from the MBR. It's a variation. It's a little bit more robust, right?
Correct. The difference is that the difference between IFAS and MBR is that the IFAS system, the activated sludge from the sludge recirculation, is additionally used. So basically, it's more for the same reaction tank volume. You get more action because it's kind of like a convection oven, right?
Right.
And so you get more out of it. So IFAS is better for the amount of space available, is essentially what I get from that. And that is about as much as, okay. Now, are these units available to be placed underground and function? Absolutely. So underground, they're placed underground and there's a small equipment.
Like a shed.
A shed that gives you access to go down, take the ladder down. And that or above ground. So it works fine. Let's see. Paul says, don't talk like that about Elon. He may be the next investor in OriginClear. He knows where the next opportunity is from your lips. All right. Now, Ray wants to know, how do you handle maintenance and interruption of service when it is required? Exactly. We always have a local partner. We don't want to run off to Texas to go maintain something. So we announced a partnership with Enviro Maintenance, which is introducing us to their fleet of trailer parks that they maintain. They've been doing septic tanks forever. And now we're going to go ahead and work with them to upgrade it. And they have given us a bid, which it too rises with inflation. And they will soup to nuts, everything, replacing the filters, the blowers, whatever it is complete. And that's how we like it. So they are required and they're a good organization. We have a relationship with Envirogen, for example, which is a multinational.
And listen, as these things, I mean, it is their obligation to make sure there is no service interruption because it's part of their contract. So,
but you got to keep in mind, Ray, Ray is a really good question. So there's two ways to interpret that, at least from my point of view. One, the way Riggs just stated. The other is literally what happens in maintenance downtime for like an end user. Well, again, keep in mind, this is not clean water incoming. This is cleaning dirty water outgoing. So if we have a downtime for a couple hours, it's not a massive deal. You're not interrupting anyone's service of water coming to their house or electricity going on, right? This is just the processing of the water that's being used as waste. So in many instances, there's no perception of the downtime because people are not worried about it. They're just flushing their toilets and things are going along, will and merry.
Well, in fact, frequently the operator of the facility will not even know there's a problem, and the technician shows up. Oh, what's going on? Oh yeah, your sensors picked up a particular problem, so we're going to pick up the problems early. And thanks, great idea, Riggs. I will need dozens in Kenya, Pakistan, Gambia, and Uganda, and at home, of course. Well, there is going to be fabulous opportunities internationally. Our focus is going to be to really, really get this thing nailed and make sure that we have scaled it up properly, as we have so many lessons to learn. I spent, with Tom Marchicello between us last week or so, we must have spent 25 hours just working on this model, building it and making it work. And remember, everything that was done before by our guy, Manuel Viana, was highly theoretical. Now we're talking about—
It's application time, sure.
So with that, now there's so much to tell, and there's somebody who can help you with that. Have you heard of this guy, Ken? Yep. You can now talk to Ken. Yep. I don't know if people realize that.
You can.
It's been mentioned once or twice.
I do it every day.
I'm sorry. Wait. What number is this? 250. What are we at?
261.
So it's been mentioned about 261 times.
At least.
I mean, plus or minus.
Right. Well, remember before COVID, we weren't doing Zoom, and that was like conference calls. I remember those conference calls.
Yeah.
Anyway, so looks like we have a good vote on
8 p.m.
Yeah, and also doing it monthly. So third week of each month, third Thursday of the month is what it's going to be. Next one is the 20th of June. Now, what do we expect to have happen? First of all, I can tell you this. We do plan to finally file the Regulation A crowdfunding. I'm not going to say the date because I'm not allowed to, but it's imminent. It's also imminent that we are, again, I can't say anything, but continuing with the SEC comment process. I can't say at what stage we're at, but it's continuing and things are moving along nicely. What else? And we filed, I didn't even mention this, my gosh.
You never mentioned the K.
The Q.
Oh, the Q, right, the Q.
On the 15th, we filed. Yesterday, on time. We've had trouble filing on time. It's been something that I've mentioned on the side. And what happens, things got very complicated. And then finally, all the complications got resolved with all the noise about mergers and companies moving around.
Well, it's starting to become like a normal filing again, right? Without the additional workload.
Exactly. So we'll probably do a review on the 20th on how things are going with the business. But, I think that we have the prescription. Remember to fill out your Zoom survey. We do look at it. And I want to thank everyone for coming.
And look, at the speed that we're going, we may have a lot more details on some of the subjects we cover tonight. There may be quite a bit of progress that will be something that would be a little bit more definable. And I'm always happy to discuss that with you folks.
Here's what we're going to do also. AJ, we're going to continue the weekly update, and that'll be my chance to summarize stuff that's been happening that, so they'll be like, hey, guess what? We, acquired a new partner, things like that, right?
Yep.
Stuff in between. So Tom Liakos, that's the third Thursday of every month. That's the day of the month, 8 p.m.
Trust me, you will be notified, Tom. I will make sure you know.
Yeah, be careful what you wish for.
So we're going to continue the weekly update because that'll be our opportunity to bring up things in the meantime, right? And that way, a particular video or whatever, because I'm still on these podcasts all the time. Sometimes they're even fairly interesting, even though they're fairly repetitive. With that, I'm going to thank you all. And it's been great doing weekly. Now we're going to do monthly. And, I was even thinking, wouldn't it be cool if we all met physically at the Ring here in Clearwater once a month for an exec meeting, get together, and then we would do the show physically around a table.
I say we sit around the pool. No, we go to Riggs' house. We sit around the pool. Come on.
I'm good with that too.
All right.
All right, guys.
Or we go to my place. Sit around the pool. Doesn't matter.
Works too.
All right.
All right. Have a good night. Thank you all. And
Everybody.
we're rocking.
All
Let's
right.
go.